In other news, President Obama is in Burma, the first ever visit of an American head of state to the country. Ahead of his talks, he said that democratic reforms in Burma had to continue if the country wanted America's support.
Obama met with Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra in Bangkok. He underscored the shift in U.S. foreign policy toward Asia.
The United States is and always will be a Pacific nation. As the fastest growing region in the world, the Asia-Pacific will shape so much of our security and prosperity in the century ahead, and it is critical to creating jobs and opportunity for the American people.
I informed the President that Thailand will initiate negotiation on the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP.
Barack Obama has heaped praise on Myanmar for its reforms during his landmark visit, but the US president also called for more progress to be made. It's the first time a sitting American president has visited the country, and he met with pro-democracy opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi, who led the struggle against military rule. Obama's first stop was talks with President Thein Sein, a former junta member who has spearheaded reforms since taking office in March last year. He'll only spend 6 hours in the country before continuing a tour of Southeast Asia.
I don't think that anyone in the Obama administration, looking back perhaps 3 years ago, would have thought that they would be, first of all, here in this country and then meeting at the home of Aung San Suu Kyi, someone who has now gone from house arrest to parliament. And we expect to hear the message that the president himself talked about earlier today after a bilateral meeting with the president of this country, Thein Sein, where the president said that he told him that they're only sort of in the first steps of what will be a long journey to democracy, but that the moves, the reforms that are taking place in this country will make this country better.
This is definitely a gamble on the side of Barack Obama. Many are saying it's perhaps too much too soon for a regime that only a year ago was labelled part of the axis of evil by Washington. There's no mistake that he's chosen the University of Rangoon to deliver his speech here today, though. This is the site of where a lot of Burma's dissidents have been based over many of the years, and it's a symbol of the resistance against dictatorship here. In 1962, it was the site of a massacre of scores of students by the military dictatorship at that time, and launching a coup. So this is definitely a gamble on the side of Barack Obama. Many people, we were speaking to people in the ethnic minorities who are still fighting against the Burmese government here. They mistrust the government and are not sure that they really are the ones to be trusted in this sort of change, and they also mistrust the Americans, saying it's perhaps not just democracy and human rights that they're here for, but also perhaps trade and geopolitical reasons.
The friendship between our two countries is of long standing. The United States has been staunch in its support of the democracy movement in Burma, and we are confident that this support will continue through the difficult years that lie ahead. I say difficult because the most difficult time in any transition is when we think that success is in sight. Then we have to be very careful that we are not lured by a mirage of success, and that we are working towards genuine success for our people and for the friendship between the two countries. I believe that we have been able to discuss our various concerns openly, and that as a result of the President's visit to this country, the relations between our countries can only progress in the right direction. I intend fully to keep in touch with the United States government as far as possible, and to make sure that we always liaise with one another on the most important matters. Now, I'm told I had 3 minutes, and I think this is about 3 minutes, so thank you all for coming, and I leave the floor to President Obama.
Well, I'll try to be equally brief, although not as eloquent. I was honored to be the first president to welcome Aung San Suu Kyi to the White House. I'm proud to be the first American president to visit this spectacular country, and I am very pleased that one of my first stops is to visit with an icon of democracy who's inspired so many people, not just in this country, but all around the world. I especially want to thank Aung San Suu Kyi for welcoming me to her home. Here, through so many difficult years, is where she displayed such unbreakable courage and determination. It's here where she showed that human freedom and dignity cannot be denied. Today marks the next step in a new chapter between the United States and Burma. Last year, in response to early flickers of reform, I asked Secretary Clinton to visit this country and explore with Aung San Suu Kyi and the government whether the United States could empower reform efforts and begin a new relationship between our peoples. In the years since, we've seen some very encouraging progress, including Daw Aung San Suu Kyi's release and election to Parliament, the release of political prisoners, the lifting of restrictions on the press, and new laws to expand labor rights and eliminate the use of child soldiers. And at my direction, the United States has responded to support these reforms, including the easing of sanctions. Now, as a former legislator myself, I followed your role in the new Parliament with interest and admiration. Real democracy involves having different branches of government check and balance each other, and I applaud your efforts in that regard, particularly as the head of the Committee of the Rule of Law. In my discussions here in Yangon, our goal is to sustain the momentum for democratization. That includes building credible government institutions, establishing rule of law, ending ethnic conflicts, and ensuring that the people of this country have access to greater education, health care, and economic opportunity. And I want to make a pledge to the people of this country that I am confident we can keep, and that is if we see continued progress towards reform, our bilateral ties will grow stronger, and we will do everything we can to help ensure success.
Well, I think the audience here, for many of them, it was a very significant moment. This hall itself was a center for the 1988 student uprising, which was so brutally put down by the regime at that stage. And there will have been people in this audience who had been invited by the US Embassy here. And so there was certainly some sympathy for what he was saying among a large number of the audience. And there was spontaneous applause at one stage during the speech when he talked about the need for national reconciliation. That is shorthand for trying to deal with the sectarian conflicts that have sprung up along the borders and in the northwest of this country. He referred specifically to the Rohingya issue, as you set out earlier on, saying that this country had temples and pagodas and mosques side by side. He referred to the United States and the diversity there as a beacon, really, for how Myanmar should develop. There were large chunks of this speech that really read like a pretty stern lecture to the leadership here. There had been some questioning about the timing of this visit, saying, those outside the country especially, saying that this was rewarding a leadership that had only just embarked on the path to reform some 20 months ago, and that this very high-profile visit was coming too soon. Perhaps to counter that, the White House had been saying that this speech would contain things that would be uncomfortable listening for the leadership here, and there was some of that. President Obama said that he referred to activists dressed in white, monks in saffron. There was, of course, the uprising of monks in 2007. Ordinary people responding to a cyclone. The government here was criticized for not responding properly to Cyclone Nargis a few years ago. And he told the audience here, now you can see it, now you can taste freedom, and to protect freedom, all voters, those in power, must accept constraints. And so there was a very clear message to the leadership in Yangon and in the official capital, Naypyidaw.